Melissa here from Youth Work Ireland, Cavan Monaghan, and I have Barry here as well with me. And you might have seen that we have been doing a few LGBT live sessions starting off in March. And what we're doing is we're bringing them back. We're going to be calling them LGBT plus chats. We're going to have them on our YouTube channels, we're going to have them on Instagram, and we're going to have them on Facebook. So the purpose of having the LGBTI chats is to give information and support to young people and to parents around the Cavan Monaghan area about issues facing young people and creating awareness about LGBT topics and subjects. So this is our first one in lockdown 2.0. If you want to put it that way, and we're going to be having them once a month. So today we're going to be talking about transgender issues, and we have Hannah here and we have Angela, and we're going to let everyone just introduce themselves.
Yeah, my name's Barry McSkeen. I am the LGBT's development worker for Cavan and Monaghan, based in Killashandra, but I work across the two counties.
Hi, I'm Hannah Solley, and I'm the Family Support and Education Officer in Teni, the Transgender Equality Network of Ireland.
Hi, I am Angela McElroy. I am mother of 3 children, the youngest of whom is an adult. She's 21 and she's a transgender female and has been now for a number of years. So I am a mother of a very beautiful daughter.
Thanks, Angela. And I suppose what's great about today is we have, you know, expertise from lots of different areas. We have like personal stories from Angela, and then we've Hannah here from Teni, and we have Barry who just brings his own great spin to things. So
we have quite scary.
Yeah. So like we're saying, we're just going to have a chat. We're just going to have a discussion. It's going to be easygoing and just kind of maybe tease out some topics. So I suppose for parents or young people that may know absolutely nothing about transgender, or maybe they're kind of thinking there's something going on with their young person, but they're not quite sure about it. And this might be all completely new language that they haven't, you know, any experience of. Hannah, could you start us off just on, you know, what does it mean to be transgender?
Yeah, well, I suppose that the term transgender is an umbrella term, and it's for a person who identifies with a gender other than that which was assigned to them at birth. So that can mean that you feel the opposite to the gender that you were born with. So if you were maybe born female and you actually feel like a male, or you can, if you were born male, you might feel female, or you might feel like another gender. So there's also non-binary identities who don't necessarily feel specifically male or female. So it's the gender other than the one that you were born with.
Okay. Yeah, and that's, it's sometimes it's trying for people to understand that it's something within the young person or the person themselves and how they're feeling about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we kind of, I suppose, the society that we live in and grow up in, as well as a lot of other societies, when we think of the word gender, we really think about the sex that is designated at birth. And we really, you know, if you separate those, I think that they're 2 separate parts of the same person. So there's biological and anatomical sex, and that's the sex that is assigned to you at birth. But then, you know, your gender identity is a deeply felt identification. It's an internal feeling of who you are as a person. And that's what makes somebody either cisgender or transgender. And just in terms of the terminology around cisgender, I am a cisgender female. I was born female. I also feel female. So they align, those 2 match, and that makes me cisgender. Whereas a transgender person, the way that they feel about themselves on the inside does not really match what they present as on the outside.
Okay. And I wonder, is there anything around what age might that occur in a person, or do we know that, or is it different for everybody?
I think it can really happen at any age, and I suppose since I've been working with Teni, I've kind of seen all of it. We have really young people who identify immediately, and I know that obviously when it comes to an infant and a baby, they don't have a gender identity, but you know, toddlers, I would hear from parents who said that, you know, trying to dress their toddler was actually really difficult. They didn't want to wear the clothes that would have been the assumed clothes that they would be wearing for, you know, for their assigned sex, for instance. Or toilet training was quite difficult maybe for some families. And once toddlers are able to verbalize, you know, some of them, you know, really quite have quite a concrete understanding of, no, I am, you know, a boy or a girl, when actually maybe their body says otherwise. We have young people in primary school who disclose that they feel that they are actually a boy or a girl on the inside when their body presents otherwise. We have teenagers, there are young adults, old adults. You know, we have had our nursing homes contact us saying that, you know, that they have, you know, elderly patients who have disclosed that actually they, you know, feel that they are transgender. So I think it can happen at any age. I think that that identification probably does happen at quite an early age. Angela might be able to talk about her experience. It's whether people feel the safety to be able to disclose that information, or to themselves and to others, and that can take a much longer period. But Angela, when did your daughter disclose?
Yeah, so Catherine would have disclosed to me when she was in around 14. That she felt that her body did not match what, you know, was going on in her head. She felt female. So we discussed it, and, you know, right from that early, you know, disclosure, I suppose, as a mother, yes, of course, it's not something that you relish hearing, but we embraced it. And I said, look, you know, if that is the way she felt, well, then we could deal with that, you know, like, I mean, if, you know, so she was happy enough just to, I suppose, develop her thoughts and feelings as to how she felt. And we did talk about them over the next year or two. At 16, she would have definitely been feeling, 15, 16, that she was definitely female. We discussed the option of, I suppose, coming out to the wider community, to her family and friends at that point. She was in an all-male school, so she made the decision herself to defer and to wait. However, around 16, 17, she asked us to refer to her as her, in her female identity in the house. And then we progressed then when she was 18 to actually full disclosure to family, friends, to start looking for medical assistance and to start transitioning formally. So I suppose it was throughout those teenage years. And as I said, back when she was 14, 15, we actually can't remember the initial conversation that she had with us in relation to that. I was more concerned about her health and her well-being and her mental health at that point. So yeah, it was an important disclosure, but the whole ethos for us was around supporting her, whatever, you know, transpired throughout the following year or two, but that as parents that we were going to support her with this transition. So yeah, like she's now 21 and doing great.
Yeah,
and
I suppose it's not a given in any way at all, but it would be quite common for young people to disclose actually around the age of puberty, and not that they are not necessarily feeling something before that. They might understand that there is something that doesn't sit quite right, or some confusion, but not really understanding necessarily what it is. But the onset of puberty can be quite a triggering time for trans young folk, because that's when they are really confronted with their body developing in a way that feels incongruent the way that they feel inside. And so you know, that is not an uncommon you know, thing that they disclose around that age of kind of between 13 and 15, but there's no set stage either.
And Angela, listening to you, I was just wondering, as a parent, you know, you're saying you don't really remember the first conversation, but I wonder, like, how did you listen to your daughter? Like, did you say, okay, well, let's think about this, or did you fully acknowledge it straight away? I just know from listening to another parent, they told me that they actually kind of ignored the first time that the young person told them. And then the young person didn't say it again for another while because it wasn't really acknowledged. So, and you sound so supportive and open. So just, I wonder initially for, you know, yourself, what happened in your thought process?
I suppose for Catherine at the time, there was a few issues that we had discovered at the time. You know, I suppose a recognition that there was some emotional and mental health issues maybe starting to arise, and trying to get, because this was a child that had no issues at all growing up, was academically doing very well, was musical, and it became a bit of a shock, I suppose, that there was, you know, that she was struggling mentally at the time. So we sought counselling for her, like, I mean, in relation to that, and it was through that process that she, a couple of months later, would have disclosed to me that she felt that she was female. Now, she did not disclose that to a counsellor at the time. It was solely between ourselves. I discussed it with her, and as I say, I was more concerned about supporting her with what was going on and getting her through those teenage years. We know a lot of teenagers struggle, so yeah, like, I mean, it was part of the conversation, and I suppose, yes, she was the youngest of three, so you hear many things when you have teenagers, and you file it in the back of your head and you think, well, this may, you know, progress, it may not, you know, it's one of those issues. And, you know, my response to her at the time would have been, well, look, if that's how you feel, we will deal with it. You know, it's, and it's not something that's going to happen overnight. And I suppose I recognize that if she was identifying as female as opposed to what she was genetically born, well, then it was going to take some time to actually go through that process. So we did talk about it from that regard and told her that we would be there to support her along the way. And, you know, once she came out and disclosed that to us, from a mental health perspective, she started to improve straight away. And I think that as well even helped her in the fact that she actually was able to open up to us and get that support within the house. You know, over the next couple of years, we would have, you know, informed kind of informally, I suppose, family members and, you know, extended family, and they have all been 100% supportive of her, you know, and that was a big thing for her as well, that she got the support, not only at home, but also from her siblings, as well as cousins and aunts and uncles and grandparents and stuff, you know. So, you know, the bigger issue for me at the time with Catherine was mental health and supporting her mental health. And being trans, it's not something that as a mother you want for your child. However, you know, there's worse things. You know, to me, this was something we could work and support her with, and to be there for her. So as parents, I suppose that's really what we've been doing for the last number of years for them.
And exactly as you say, sorry, Barry, go on, you go on.
No, I just with that, like, that's one of the most important things I think a parent can actually do, is to support. It's not that it mightn't necessarily be a journey that you've planned out for your young person, but that support is integral to them growing up to be healthy individuals. Like, there's quite a number of young people that tap into our service, and especially over previous lockdown, like, it's been a massive struggle for a lot of LGBT young people across the board in lockdown, and then not being accepted by family is one of the biggest problems that young people are facing, and it's having a dramatic impact on their mental health, like, to the point that youth workers like myself and yourself are actively trying to engage young people into mental health services of whatever form, but again, not having access to that and not being able to give medical consent for a young person to get the help that they need. And I'm just talking about mental health. that's the most important thing for me at the moment, is to ensure that young people's mental health is solid and that they feel supported in their community and in the family home. So for the likes of Catherine, I'm delighted that they had the support and they had parents who were open to that conversation and willing to support them and guide them. Like I'm lucky enough that I know Catherine from before Catherine came out, and Catherine has made me quite uncomfortable on numerous occasions where I've accidentally used the wrong name or the wrong pronoun, because I obviously knew Catherine before Catherine transitioned as well. But again, that's one of the things that we as adults and as youth workers or parents or family members need to be aware of. And yeah, sorry, I'm just going on one of my many little rambles, and now I'm going to keep quiet for a few minutes. It's over to you again, Melissa. This is why I have Melissa here.
I would just like to say that I think that, you know, that's great that Catherine had the confidence to be able to correct you and say, actually, no, you're using the wrong pronoun, or that's not my name. But I suppose not all trans people have that confidence. And so it is important as a collective that we, you know, that we really, not to say that you weren't trying your best there, Barry, but you know, that we really do try to remember, you know, pronouns and remember why they're important. This is why they're important. Exactly, yeah. Maybe some of us don't really think about our pronoun very much, but certainly from for a trans young person, they really do. And even though they may not present the way that you might expect, that doesn't, you know, lessen the pronoun that they've asked to be used. And I think that's really important. But well done for Catherine to be able to go, excuse me, you've got that wrong.
But I think the other most important thing that we can do is actually accept that we are going to make mistakes. And if we make a mistake, apologize for that mistake.
Yeah.
Because Catherine wasn't being defensive at all whenever I did mispronoun. She was actually playing games with me. and
I think that that's
I'm
really
enjoying it, which
for,
I thought was fantastic.
I think that's really important, especially for teachers, not so much youth workers, because I think youth workers probably don't mind getting it wrong as much, but I think for teachers, certainly, you know, they I think they have that facade where they need to feel like they're in control and that they know everything because that's their position. And I think that we kind of need to just let that disintegrate a bit, that it's okay to make a mistake. It doesn't make you any less of a teacher or any less of an adult. And actually, it's really good role modeling for peers and other students to see you get it wrong and to see how you handle it and go, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I meant to say, you know, whatever the name is or whatever the pronoun that you got wrong. You apologize, you correct yourself, you move on. It doesn't have to be a big deal. But you know, students will be watching to see, and also, you know, maybe in an LGBT youth club as well, they'll be waiting to see how you respond to that. You know, of course we all make mistakes. That's totally acceptable.
Yeah, from Catherine's perspective, I suppose like that we would have made quite a few mistakes in the first year or two, and again, like that, you know, a teenager and you're getting the pronouns wrong, she would have been a little bit angry initially in relation to those errors and those mistakes. But we did talk about it, and, you know, as I explained to her, in my head, of course, she was, you know, you spend 15, 16 years referring to your child as whatever name that you assign to them at birth and use those pronouns. So I did explain it was probably going to take maybe a year or 2 years for us to get it right. I still occasionally get it wrong, even though we're a number of years down the line at this stage. I still occasionally do, but for the most part, you know, we're all getting it. We've all adapted and we've adjusted. But you know, like you said, Barry, like, I mean, she actually is at a point now where she takes delight in correcting you if you get it wrong. She'll laugh about it. She's gone through those teenage years of the angst and the anger, really, in relation to getting a pronoun wrong. Whereas, you know, nowadays she's 21. And by the way, she has given me, I suppose, the authorization to discuss her on the likes of these meetings. Like, I mean, she doesn't mind us talking about her, and that, you know, she's just delighted that we are setting up a support network for, you know, families and for parents and children, you know, so I have authority from her to talk about her.
I'm sorry. Yeah, and thanks very much to you, Angela, and to Catherine for sharing your story, because it's really important to get kind of the personal feeling to a story for parents to identify with, and to hear, you know, what you have to say, and Catherine's experiences as well. But I just wanted to bring you back a wee bit to where you were saying, you know, when she told you this, that you knew, okay, this is going to take time. Because I think even maybe parents or teachers or whoever is watching this may not understand that there are stages to transitioning. And one, you know, one stage of it may be social transitioning, which means, you know, that you're maybe changing your appearance, you're maybe changing your name, and that's all that you're doing. So that there is different stages that a young person or any person can go through, and that they can stop at any stage as well, in that they're comfortable with where they are. So does Hannah or Angela want to explain what the stages are, or, you know, what may or may not happen?
Yeah, a transition is the process through which some trans people will begin to live outwardly in the identity that they, in the gender that they identify with, rather than that which was assigned to them at birth. And I say some trans people because not all trans people will transition. There's no one way to transition, the same as there's no one way to be trans, the same way as there's no one way to be, you know, any kind of human being. And I suppose a lot of trans people will go through some of the stages of transitioning, but not necessarily avail of every aspect of a transition that is out there. And at the same time, you know, some trans people will undergo, I suppose, all levels of transition that are available to them. So yeah, in terms of a social transition, that would be coming out to family, friends, your school or your college or your workplace, and then the possibility of a name and pronoun change, the possibility of changing, you know, your gender expression, so your clothes, your hair, that type of thing. And that would be, yeah, I suppose that would be kind of the first stage and the most common stage that that trans people will undergo. From that point, I suppose there's a variety of medical interventions, none of which can be accessed before, at least before puberty, by the way. So in terms of primary school children or pre-pubertal children, there is only a social transition. There is not anything else out there that will be accessible to them. So from the age of about 14 onwards, there is the possibility of puberty suppressants, and they pause puberty at whatever stage the young person is at. Again, you know, the timeline for that varies widely in Ireland. And I don't know any 14-year-olds who have accessed that, but around 15, 16-year-olds, there might be a few who are on puberty suppressants. After that, I suppose there is the possibility of cross-sex hormones, so either estrogen or testosterone, depending on how you identify. Again, that's not really accessible until you're over the age of 18. Just the way that the Irish services are. You can legally transition as well, so having legal documents changed. So obviously you can change your name by deed poll at any age with your parents' consent. And then there is a thing called the Gender Recognition Certificate that can be obtained from the age of 16 and over. And what that does is when you get your gender recognition certificate, you can then change your gender marker on your birth certificate, your passport, your driver's license, that type of thing. So again, if you're over 18, that's quite straightforward. The model that we have in Ireland is an informed consent model. So you just fill in the application form, you send it off, you'll receive your gender recognition certificate back, and then you can go about changing your birth certificate and any other documents that you need to. If you're between the ages of 16 and 17, it can still be done. You need your parents' consent. You need documents from a physician and a clinical psychologist. So you need a diagnosis of gender dysphoria in order to get it as a 16 and 17-year-old. You have to go to the family court in order to have it petitioned to get that certificate. So it's definitely more cumbersome if you're under the age of 18. We do have 16 and 17-year-olds who have done it, along with their their parents' help and support. But I suppose a lot of young people do really wait until they're 18 because the process is much easier. And then in terms of surgeries, there is no surgery that can be accessed until you're at least 18. That just isn't possible. And I suppose that would include top surgery and bottom surgery. I'm not really going to go into much detail about that, but generally speaking, they would come at a much later stage. I think that there's a lot of the trans community are really keen on socially transitioning and getting cross-sex hormones. That would be the main parts, important parts of transitioning, I think. And obviously for trans men, top surgery would be really important for them because they want to have a masculine build. And in terms of gender dysphoria, that it can be quite dysphoric to be in a in a body that is incongruent to the way that you feel inside. So, but I don't really want to, I suppose, talk too much about surgeries and medical interventions, because I think it's a really unique experience. And I think that, every single trans person probably has a different story about how they transitioned. And I'm not trans, so I'm not obviously the best person to talk about transitioning. But those are the different areas. I think that we tend to really think about transitioning as a medical process, or being trans as a medical process, and it's not. It's just not. Being transgender is being a person like any other person, and it just so happens that that some trans people will undergo some sort of transition in order to feel more comfortable about themselves.
Yeah, and I think it is important to say that, like you're saying, that people naturally jump to the medical side of it, where there's a whole social transition to get used to and to get comfortable with first. And I wonder myself, is it okay to just say, maybe that if like that you have told your parents to maybe just try out some of the things at home first, as in asking your parents to call you by a different name, or it may be, I know myself from working with young people that a lot of the times they ask their friends to do it first, so that maybe their friends in school or outside school are actually calling them a different name, and the friends actually know what's going on, and they're trying it out there first to see how it goes. I have a personal experience of a young person was coming in, presenting as female, had long hair, knew her female name, and then after about 2 weeks, when I looked at the sign-in sheet, the name had changed to a male name. And I just said to the young person, "Oh, is this what you want to be called now? Is this what you want to be known as?" And they said yes. So when they were at the youth centre, I would call them by their male name and give he pronouns. And then a couple of weeks later, the hair was cut. So there was small little gestures of things happening, but I definitely knew that at home this young person was presenting as female, but they were getting the experience with their friends and in the youth centre of being male.
Yeah, I think that, again, like the fact that everybody is unique, all of these things are going to be different depending on the person, depending on the family unit, depending on maybe the area which they live in the country. All of these factors will come into whether a young person feels safe and confident enough to disclose and begin to live outwardly with the way that they feel inside. And, you know, just like that, I suppose it's really difficult to kind of put into perspective just one certain way to do it. And, you know, I have definitely given that advice to families, you know, maybe let your young person experiment at home. Would they like to go shopping with you? Or would they like to choose some clothes over the internet to try and to wear at home and see how that feels? They want to choose a new name. Would they like to use a new pronoun? So those are certainly things that can be used and tried out within the house. You know, other young people feel like, actually, I know how I feel, but I don't really want to move further forward until either I've left school or until I have had that first appointment with the gender services, so that I know there is, you know, that I have more of a timeline about when I might be able to access either puberty suppressants or hormones. I suppose for the teenage population, the idea of getting on cross-sex hormones is quite important to them a lot of the time, because that's when they can really start to physically feel, you know, more of an alignment to the way that they feel inside, when they feel that their hormones match their identity. So, and without getting too deep and meaningful, I think that a lot of it does come back to our society as well. And I think that, you know, I think that being transgender and transitioning becomes quite medicalized because people are looking for validation, and that, you know, in our society, unless you present in a certain way, you're not necessarily going to get validated from the wider society. And I think that's why a lot of people really seek out, you know, those healthcare pathways, because they know that when they go outside of their house, simply saying "I am who I am" isn't necessarily going to be received in the same way by everybody. And so therefore the only way to achieve that is by getting hormones and physically looking and sounding more like the way that you feel inside.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the most important things, though, for parents to be aware of too, and it is a frustrating thing, I think, and Angela will definitely agree with me in this, is the length of time it takes to actually to go through the process of socially transitioning, and then possibly medical interventions of some sort, and possibly surgery further down the line. I think it's important for parents of young people that have just come out. I think sometimes the fear is, if they start to agree with the young person, that everything's going to happen, it's going to snowball and they're going to lose control. It's not something that is rushed through in the Irish system. The young person has to receive all the supports of medical professionals, mental health professionals, the support of the family, teachers, schools, youth services. So it's not going to be a case that if you say to a young person, okay, that's fine, you identify as trans, that they're necessarily going to rush through anything. They need to be an adult before any medical or surgical interventions can happen, is essentially the message that we need to get across. And there is no rushing through. The most important thing is to affirm what the young person is saying. You're not confirming anything, but you're acknowledging their thoughts and their feelings about who they are as an individual. And that in itself is giving them some empowerment, I think, moving forward.
Yeah.
I would agree with you on that, Barry, and that it's not, and I wouldn't, you know, I'd say the advice is that it's not something that can be rushed, you know, to be prepared for a transition to take time, certainly in our experience and in my experience talking to other trans parents, that, you know, the process takes time. And I think the whole, you know, ethos behind all of that for me as a parent is to actually to be there to support your child regardless of, you know, what stage of that process they're at. Is the support network available within the home or within that your family network, like, I mean, for the young person? Because it is, transition and does take time. And I think what parents are afraid of if somebody comes out maybe with, you know, a child identifying as trans is that, oh, within 6 months they will be. It's going to take a number of years. And, you know, even just the social transition and like that, as I think Hannah, maybe you said it, or Melissa, you know, Catherine would have identified as female to a youth group initially and would have told me a couple of months later, my friends in Dundalk called me Catherine. And I said, oh, that's grand, you know. I said, do you want us to call you Catherine at home? And she says, no, not yet, you know. So again, even for her and for her mentally, it took her a while just to start trying it out, to have that group of friends. But at school, she maintained, you know, and stayed within her assigned birth gender right up until she did her leaving certs. So, you know, at that point we were calling her Catherine at home, but she went outside our door and went to school. She was a different person, I suppose. And like that, she did wait until she was over 18 to actually come out and transition socially and to go down the route of medically. And I suppose talking about the medical route, and that we would have found that our GP, who has been extremely supportive, he's been excellent. He knew nothing about transgender when Catherine went to him initially. And we, you know, Catherine, because she was 18, she was going in on her own to the GP. I wanted to go with a list. And of course, you know, not too many 18-year-olds do lists as to what they want to talk about. So it took a few meetings with the GP to put her on the right track as to where she needed to go for assistance, because transitioning is a process. It's a slow enough process, even from a medical perspective. But even just to inform the GP, and Teni would have been excellent with the information, I suppose, to be able to give to that GP to tell him what being transgender meant. Because not a lot of GPs have experience of dealing with a transgender child or adult on their book, you know. So yeah, it's a process that does take time, but I think that also gives the person involved, it gives them time as well mentally to deal with this transition. And they've come from one sex and they're going to change totally to another, to a different one that's assigned to them at birth. So, you know, time actually is good to give them that time. And I think the important thing is to support them mentally, you know, really through that process.
And I think, do you think, Angela, then, you know, it's good for the young person and the parent to have that time, because the parent needs to adjust to the situation too?
I remember telling Catherine at one stage it would probably take me 2 years to get used to calling her in the, you know, correct pronouns, and it definitely did. So even as a parent, yes, it has, you know, it's good to, and even for our wider family network. And look, we still get it wrong. Like, I mean, we're 3 years down the line now, and in my head, I still think of the wrong pronoun if I am thinking, you know, subconsciously. You know, so it's, you know, I would often call her by her name, and, you know, it's easier sometimes than getting the wrong pronoun, you know, that I always get her name right, strangely enough, at this stage. To me, you know, that's the name that she is, and but yeah, it takes time, and it is good even for parents, you know. But I think the whole thing right back at the very start is to support your child, no matter whether they come out anywhere along the LGBT spectrum, you know, that to be there to support them and to help them to, you know, for them to acknowledge what has gone on in their head and how they feel.
Yeah, and I think it's important to say as well that denying somebody their identity, or, you know, trying to brush it away, or put it out of your mind as a parent or family member, it doesn't make it go away. All you do is suppress it, and you add a layer of shame to that young person who, you know, who felt that they could say something to you. And I suppose, like you were saying earlier, Melissa, that you'd heard from a parent who, when they did kind of, you know, shut that down, the young person backed away from that for a while. So, you know, that is quite common. We do see that. It doesn't mean that it went away. It just means that they don't feel like you are a safe person to, you know, to discuss this with, because you blank down. Now, that could be out of shock or just, you know, numbness or not knowing what to say. I don't know what to say, so I'm just going to say nothing. And then you kind of expect that your young person is going to bring that up again. They're unlikely to if you didn't at least say something, even if it's, oh gosh, you know, wow, that's, you told me something really, you know, interesting or something there. I need to, can you give me a bit of time to think about this? You don't have to be suddenly, I suppose, overwhelmingly like, oh, you know, I'll do everything, which, you know, and you can be, but I suppose a lot of parents do end up kind of in a bit of shock. Nobody expects to have this conversation with their young people. And it's okay to say, okay, can I just have a bit of time with this? And we'll talk about this a little bit later. I just need to kind of let that, you know, settle with me, because that's, you know, that's a big piece of information. I think that another thing that parents quite often do, and again, this is just through feedback that from conversations that I've had with parents, is that, you know, automatically when your young person gives you this type of information, it feels so big, and you, as a parent, you start to think about everything and about their whole lifelong journey and all of the things that this is going to change everything. And, you know, are they going to be safe, okay, out in society, and how are they going to be with this, and, you know, what kind of job are they going to get? And you know, your mind just expands like the universe. And what I always say to parents is, you know, bring it back. This is today, and think about tomorrow, and maybe just think about the next week or the next couple of months, but try not to think too big, because, you know, it does, of course, look overwhelming, and it's not as overwhelming when you take it, you know, a little bit at a time. Angela probably can talk a little bit more about that, but I think it's really important, and I suppose with any kind of you know, information that you might get that feels so, like, you know, huge, it's just better to take it a day at a time, I think. Did you feel like that at all, Angela, when she first told you?
Yeah, I suppose the safety aspect, as you said, like, I mean, that is the only thing that I would be concerned about, in that, you know, when she goes out at night and she's dressed in female. Now, Catherine is 6'2". She's tall and very slim. You know, and she does go out dressed very feminine at night. And yes, you would be concerned at maybe some individuals' reactions to that. So, you know, but look, I have another son and daughter. I'd be concerned when they go out at night as well, and where they are and who they're mixing with. So, you know, it is maybe a little bit more heightened when you have a transgender person in the family, but at the same time, she's well capable of minding herself, I suppose, and she has a fantastic network of friends. So when she does go out, those friends are extremely supportive to her and make sure that she's safe. So yeah, it is a concern, I suppose, that aspect of it. From an aspect of work or society, or even friends, you know, the people that are involved in our lives and the jobs that she'll go into, you know, as I said, there are people that do support her, and she has been supported by everybody we have encountered so far. She's currently in college. Like that, we went up to the college a couple of weeks before she started, because if you go back to when she didn't come out until she had her Leaving Cert completed. My advice to her at the time was to take a year out from college before she would actually go off, so that we could spend that year. Now, she did go to a local college because I didn't allow her to sit at home, and she took the year out then to transition. So when she was heading off to college, of course, she was, all her exam result papers and all were in her male name because she had, that's, you know, how she had sat her exam and applied for college courses back when she was pre-leaving cert. We went up to the college that she went to maybe a month or 6 weeks before start date, armed with a bundle of papers, you know, with her female gender recognition and her female birth certificate and the whole works, expecting to have some difficulties. We had the whole process completed between, you know, the campus accommodation and the college itself, and had her name changed within probably about half an hour. I was overwhelmed by the support we got in the college, and, you know, the fact that the process was so simple. I remember sitting outside the admissions office and telling my husband, who hadn't been involved really in everything, I said, I'm tired doing this. It's time for you to go in and do this, you know. He came back out within 3 minutes. And I said, you know, what happened? Were you thrown out? And he says, no, it's done. You know, so, you know, the fear of the unknown, I suppose we expect to encounter massive hurdles. In that particular instance, definitely wasn't there. You know, the support out there is just, it's been fantastic, you know, in relation to some of the processes that we have gone through. From a medical perspective, yes, that takes time, but, you know, time in some ways is good for us all to get our head around it and to get our wider family circle and friends, you know, to adjust to her new identity.
Yeah.
To get all of that right. So yeah, we're, you know, it's still a process, it's still ongoing, but we're getting there.
I think that these days, in 2020, the majority, if not all, colleges and universities do have a trans-specific policy, and a lot of the workforce do. So certainly large organizations definitely do have a trans-specific policy in terms of supporting a transition within the workplace, for instance. And as an organization, we've consulted a lot. That would be Gordon Grehan. He's one of my colleagues, and he would do organizations and universities. So he would be involved in a lot of that policy making. So yeah, I think that, you know, in that regards, yeah, there is a lot of support, and that might be something for young people to look out for, you know, when they're starting college or looking at applying for a job. You know, if you look on their website, their policies should be on there. If they've got a you know, a trans-specific policy, or a gender identity and gender expression policy, that's what I was looking for, gender identity and gender expression policy, then they're going to be a supportive place to work, you know, so look out for those types of things as well.
And it is great to hear that there is so many supports, and there are, like you're saying, the bigger organizations are there to help young people, and there's laws and that to help. But I do know from experience of young people, there are some barriers to them, and like one that used to come up a lot with the teenagers I worked with was they were afraid to go out and get jobs because their names like that mightn't match up with, you know, PPS numbers and how they're presenting. So they would really recoil away from trying to find a job, as one example of the types of, or even maybe going to the doctor, that they you know, and even if it was nothing to do with the medical side of things, it's just they had a really bad cold, or they had a chest infection or whatever, and that they weren't going to the doctor because they felt like when they got in there they were going to have to start this whole big explanation that they didn't want to get into. So there is barriers there facing young people, and I wonder, is there any other things that I'm not thinking of there? That there's the doctor thing, there's, you know, maybe trying to find a job. Is there other barriers out there for young people in Ireland?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose depending on the young person or the way that a young trans person might feel, I think that they probably feel like there are barriers in all areas, you know, or going into a shop and asking for something, and, you know, the fear of possibly being misgendered, you know, using a public toilet. These aren't always things that actually happen, but they are certainly things that young people worry about. Using a certain changing facility in a public swimming pool or a leisure centre, you know, all of these things are certainly things that young, well, not just young trans folk, but trans folk of all ages may think about, well, you know, before using them. I suppose it's about maybe, I mean, I'm not sure how you overcome those exactly, other than, you know, going out and being yourself. Maybe contacting, you know, in terms of the doctors, if you've got a family doctor, and if you have come out and disclosed to a certain doctor, maybe that's the same doctor that you try to hold on to for a good few years, so that you don't feel like you're having to explain your situation every time you go to the doctor for anything, whether it's, you know, a verruca or I don't know. But you're right, it's not necessarily a trans specific you know, medical reason that you're going, but you might still feel that you need to explain yourself in some way. You know, checking out I know that some families, you know, might check out the local swimming pools or leisure centres beforehand to see what the changing facilities are like, and do they feel comfortable in using them. You know, I think that these days most of them, you know, our local one has individual changing rooms, so you know, that's obviously fine for everybody. Maybe the school swimming experience is a bit different. Sports as well, I think that trans people can feel like they're excluded from sports sometimes because they're really quite gendered. I know that Gordon has been working with the GAA and other sporting bodies in terms of creating more inclusive policies around that. So, you know, certainly in writing, they are being progressive. I don't know whether you will necessarily find that as you go around the country and in different areas, but I don't know that. I would like to think that they are certainly becoming more inclusive, and that a young person can play on the team that they feel, you know, most comfortable with. But those are areas that young people say that they feel that they either discrimination or excluded from. Yeah.
I suppose, Hannah, another one of those would be just general bathroom facilities in you know, shopping centres or no matter where you go. I think, you know, while our experience has been broadly kind of positive in relation to Catherine's transition, and yes, you will get some strange looks from individuals when you go out, but like, I mean, I think anybody that's in any way different will get strange looks, like, I mean, and some people just don't know when to embrace change. Yes, facilities when you go out to shopping centres or wherever is, you know, can be problematic. I think some of them are getting better at it, and they have, you know, a lot of the schools, Hannah, you would know, that would have gender neutral bathrooms now to be able to facilitate transition in students. And that is working its way through other organisations as gender neutral bathrooms, like, I mean, but yeah, Catherine probably has had a few looks going into female bathrooms, but you know, in the early days, it was difficult for her to do that. She did not want to go to male bathroom facilities. She wanted to go into the female bathroom facilities, and it took her a while, like, I mean, but she's getting there, you know, like, I mean, and, you know, schools and colleges now have the gender neutral bathrooms, which does make it an awful lot easier for Catherine or other trans people to access. But yeah, it is a barrier, certainly, like, I mean, but it is one that the trans person has to overcome as well, you know. It takes a little bit of bravery for them to go into the gender bathrooms that they want to use, because they feel that people will be looking at them, so they have to be brave themselves to actually, you know, to do that.
And for people to maybe just mind their own business.
Yes, bit of that.
You're in there doing your business, assume that everybody's just going in to do their business, and just, you know,
I've had to buy a few times.
yeah. People know you don't need to worry about what bathroom is appropriate for another bathroom, as long as you know which bathroom is appropriate for you. Yeah. And you can assume that the person who's coming into the same, you know, facilities that you're in knows which ones they're in, and you know, are in there for a reason. So you know, just let people get on with this.
I know, I remember Bernadine from Dundalk Outcomers, she was saying once, like, it's all unisex bathrooms at home, lads, so, you know, what's the problem? And I think even my mind was blown when she said that. I was like, yeah, we're all using
you don't pass the remarks at home.
Yeah, so like, what, you know, what's the difference? So it's just challenging our ways of thinking, and you know, the way things have always been, and maybe it's time for a change. So it's just simple little things like that we just presume that's just the way it is, when it could be different. So I suppose just moving on then to, you know, what supports are out there for families with young people who are trans?
Yeah, I mean, I think firstly and primarily organizations like yourselves, you know, I think that youth organizations, youth clubs are so incredibly important, because as you have already pointed out, Melissa, you know, it's quite often a place where young people feel like it's the first place that they can express themselves. Angela said the same, that Catherine was, you know, identifying as female within a youth club setting before she even came out, you know, specifically to her family. So they can be really safe spaces. In terms of what Teni can support and can provide, we have two support groups. We have one for parents and family members, and that's called Transparency, and that's for any adult family member of a trans person. So you know, currently it's made up of a lot of parents, but also grandparents, aunts, siblings, adult siblings of trans people, also adult children of adult trans people as well. So that is a family support group, and it's incredibly beneficial for the families. Angela will talk about that in a minute as well, because I know that she has attended it for many years. And we also have a young person support group, so a young trans and gender diverse peer support group called Transformers, and that's for secondary school age, so really from the age of 13 to 18, 19, and that is really beneficial for young people to be around other young people who have similar stories to themselves, and maybe talk about things that are maybe a little bit more difficult experiences that they might be having, that they may not necessarily talk about in a youth club setting. I know that those kind of sensitive conversations can happen in a youth club, but I think there's, you know, there's a certain holding within a therapeutic group that's trans specific, so you can kind of discuss those things that are really, you know, that are really going to, the people in the group are really going to understand. So those are our two groups. So up until very recently, we had them in 5 regions throughout the country, and we had Dublin North, Dublin City, Waterford City, Cork City, and Tralee. But as of next week, with the wonderful help of Barry here, we have a brand new one in the Cavan Monaghan area, which is absolutely fabulous.
We're delighted, I forgot to unmute there, surprise, delighted to actually have this service come to Cavan Monaghan. We had originally planned to have it in a physical location, but thanks to our good friend COVID-19, we're moving online. So on the 28th of next week, the Transparency group is meeting via Zoom, and on the 29th, Thursday night, the Transformers group is meeting via Zoom. So if anybody's interested, they can contact myself or they can contact Teni, and we'll be able to get you registered and send out the links to attend them groups as well. But it will be, moving forward, we'll be running on the last Wednesday of every month once we can physically meet. While we're doing the online meetings, it'll be the last Wednesday for parents, last Thursday for young people, or for the transparency group, sorry, for the Wednesday, and the young people's group on the Thursday. So can't wait, to be quite honest. It's really, it's an exciting time, I think, for young trans people. And of course we have our own LGBTI plus youth clubs that the young people can attend on a weekly basis anyway, and we're doing them via Zoom at the moment. So they have that social outlet. But as Hannah rightly said, the Transformers is trans-specific for the young people. It's led by a counsellor, is one of the lead facilitators in the space. So if there's any issues that come up, the young people will have the support in that space as well, which is vital, I think, for the well-being of the young people and to ensure that they're being looked after. So can't wait, yeah.
I'd be interested to hear from you, Angela, because I know that you attended the Dublin Finglers group for years, as did Catherine as well. So how did you find that? What benefit did you get from it? Because you kept coming back, so.
It is, oh, we did, yeah. Like, I suppose, you know, while I was, and my husband were very supportive of Catherine in transition, and she came to me, like, I mean, we knew the group was on. It was on a Wednesday night as well, in Finglas once a month. And to go from Monaghan to Finglas on a Wednesday evening, be there for 7 o'clock, like, I mean, it was no mean feat after work, and getting her out of school, and you know, it's a homework night and all of that, like, I mean, so it's quite a journey up and down the road, like, I mean, to enable us to do that. But I knew that Catherine needed that support network as well as ourselves. So from Catherine's perspective, going to the support group like that, it was a forum, but, you know, away from other individuals, away from locals, I mean, that was solely specifically trans focused. So it gave her the opportunity to meet. We started going, I suppose, when she was maybe 17. I can't remember the exact date that we started going, maybe heading on towards late 16th into 17 year. And she made great friends. So she, you know, to sit for an hour and a half or 2 hours in the company of other trans individuals who were like herself, who were in the process of transitioning, who were at different stages of the transition, who had a safe space to talk about where they were on that process. From a parent's perspective, like, I mean, and going in, so we were in a different room to our trans children. From a parent's perspective, like that, it gave a safe space to be able to talk about your emotions and feelings surrounding having a transgender child in your family. And as I said, there were parents there with children of all different ages, parents, aunts, uncles, siblings, you know, nieces, nephews, like, I mean, of a trans person. So it was a safe forum to talk about the feelings and emotions surrounding, you know, having a transgender person within your family network. It also, for me, gave a forum of advice. This was something that I had never encountered in my life before, didn't think I would ever. It's as somebody said to me recently, "God, you hear about trans individuals, you think it's somebody else's family." Well, it can be any of our families, that, you know, and that's the reality of it. So the Transparent Forum definitely was a wonderful information sharing forum where you could hear, right, okay, so we have a Gender Recognition Act that actually, as a society, we recognise these individuals and their chosen gender, and they can identify as male or female as opposed to what they were born with, you know, and the process of going through, you know, where to go to get that information, where to get the forms, what needed to be done, from a medical perspective even. Who is the best place to go to, or, you know, who's the best person to go to for your psychological assessments? Like, I mean, what the process is, you know, how do you go down the medical route of it? Like, I mean, so all of that information we got as parents through the Trans Parents Forum, as well as from Teni. Like, I mean, so I would advocate everybody should use some of those support. You know, it also gave the courage, I think, as well, which was, you know, with one particular family member, but going to the group gave me the courage to actually say to other people in our network, you know, we have a transgender female and we're proud of her, you know. So it's, you know, because everybody in that room is in the same situation, we all supported each other in going home. And it was great to come back the next month and say, yeah, here's what we've done in the last month, you know, here's how we've come along. We've, you know, and everybody was coming such a long way, you know, within that, but definitely the support from other parents was vital. Then, of course, there was the residential weekend, of course, which unfortunately this year isn't going ahead. And that was a fantastic source of information. Again, you know, parents and trans children coming together, like, I mean, to get support and educational sessions surrounding, you know, their whole societal change and the medical change and all of that. So definitely, you know, it all works together to help and support parents and trans individuals, regardless of what age that trans person is, you know, so.
Yeah, I think it's important for parents and family members to recognize that it is a journey for them as well. And, you know, it's okay. Your feelings are just as valid as the young person's feelings as well, or the family member who's transitioning. And not everybody in the family might be on the same timeline at the same time. That doesn't mean that you're not supportive or that you don't love that person. Just, you know, you can't really help your feelings. And I think that if you try to suppress those as a parent to just keep that support going, I think that that's going to come back later on in life anyway. So that's why those transparency groups, we really feel that the whole family unit needs to get that support in order to create the best possible outcomes for that young person going into adulthood and transitioning fully, and to be around other parents where you can really just express yourself in whatever way that is, depending on the day and the month, and that it's totally non-judgmental. Nobody's going to think anything about you because of something that you happen to say, and everybody knows that you're still coming from, you know, a good place. Or even if you're right in the beginning and you're feeling confusion, you know, those parents will absolutely, you know, support and give you that buoyancy. That's great to hear that that you all helped each other in gaining that courage to tell the wider family unit or the wider friendship unit that are around you. So yeah, I think that both of the groups are really beneficial for the whole family.
And I think it is very important too that parents and families do realise that the likes of Teni, the likes of my organisation, that we are there as much for them as we are for the young person, because it's through supporting the parents that we're able to support the young people as well. And that's why it is so important that the parents do reach out if they're struggling, if they need any sort of help. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help, because that's a primary purpose, I think, for both of our organisations, is to ensure that families are supported and feel empowered to help their young person moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would have numerous conversations with parents, you know, in the beginning stages who don't even feel ready to join the support group. So they know that they're there. You know, I get their email addresses, they're put on our mailing list. They can link in with those support groups whenever they feel ready, but there's no pressure to do it. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, or if you are just having a bad day, then you can still call myself in Teni. You can still call. We have a transgender family support line as well, and it's run by volunteers who are all parents of trans people. And that runs on a Sunday evening and a Tuesday morning. It's on our website, the details for that on the Teni website. But that's a really good one to access as well. If you feel like you're not ready for a support group, you haven't got to that point quite yet, but you really need to talk to another parent for whatever reason, the support line is really a good service, you know, really beneficial service that's there.
Really good. And can I just ask, because it's just a question, and maybe somebody who's watching this might be a question, is the Transformers transparency, is that for a certain amount of months, or is it, will it keep running, or do you know, is it a program, or is it a consistent support group?
Yeah, it runs throughout the year. There is quite often a break, maybe just in August, just because obviously everybody needs to have a holiday themselves. So sometimes it might break, maybe even for July and August. This year, obviously, it was completely different. It was online. We ran we ran through to July. We took August off. We did a few physical meetups in the shape of walk and talks, so therapeutic walking in nature whilst being able to maybe talk about certain issues. And we did that through August, September. Yeah, August and September, actually. There's been a few. And now we're back in October, and the online groups are starting back. Pre-COVID or without COVID, we probably would have been back with physical meetups last month. I think we were all hoping that we would be able to do that, so we were stretching it out a little bit longer to see. But look, this is our situation. We all make the best of it, don't we? So this is where we are. But we're still, you know, it's still great that we have a new group that's starting, and I think there isn't anything in your area so far. So it's great to be, you know, to start this partnership and to have that there.
So, and it's great. So what we say is that they can contact Teni or they can contact Barry if they want to get involved in the group.
For the Cavan Monaghan area,
yeah.
And for any of the other regions, yeah, just either contact myself or Teni in general, and you'll get those details.
Okay, and we're going to finish up soon, but one last question that I have, if you're okay with that, Barry, Barry
Yeah.
Is just, you know, what advice would you give to families? How can they support each other? Like, it may be advice to the parent, or it may be advice to the young person. You know, how can families support each other?
I suppose from my point of view, for parents, I would say don't panic. It's all going to be okay. It maybe feels like just really overwhelming in the beginning, but you know, it'll be fine, and you're not alone, and it'll be okay. And I think for young people, it's about, you know, managing expectations, and again, that, you know, everything will be okay. It probably won't happen as fast as you might like it to, just because the healthcare pathways are, you know, not amazing in Ireland, and it does take time. And I think that everything, when you're a teenager anyway, feels really magnified and like everything's going to last forever. But you will get there, and you will be an adult, and you will be living the life that, you know, feels authentic to you. And you'll still have so many more years after that. And, you know, at some point in the future, it will feel like a blip. So, you know, don't give up. You'll get there. Angela?
Yeah, I'd be inclined to agree with that. And I think we're fortunate in today's society, in today's Irish society. Yes, healthcare may be problematic, but from a society, our mindset has changed in society. And I think, you know, acceptance is much greater now than it was maybe 20, 30 years ago in relation to anybody in the LGBT, you know, forum kind of, you know. So I think for our young people today, I think, you know, that they will get the support. It takes time sometimes to get that. But I think definitely schools, colleges are definitely much more supportive and much more accepting of individuals in their chosen gender. And it's definitely becoming more normalized, which is fantastic for our children. That it is becoming more normalized. They can talk about it a little bit freer, and they're definitely more accepted in today's society than they had been previous to this. So it's all a process, but it's all heading in the right direction, thankfully, in Ireland. Even from a legal perspective, it's definitely heading in the right direction. So yeah, it's exciting times for these young people, so that they're able to actually talk about it with more freedom nowadays than maybe they have done in the past. As you said earlier, Hannah, like, I mean, you have adults coming out as transgender now that have lived, you know, in their assigned gender for 40, 50 years. So we know that there are some adults that do transition, you know. So definitely for our young people, I think it is marginally easier to do that now, and it's much more accepting to do it. And as I say, we have the legislation as well to support them in that transition.
Which is great.
I suppose I'd be sort of thinking too, for the young person, yes, be proud, stand tall, be yourself. You might not always get the reaction that you would like at home as well, but it's important that you remember you have had time to figure out who you are in yourself and to accept your identity. And you do need to give your family a bit of time, because as Angela was saying as well, they've grown up knowing you as one person, as one identity. So it will take time, but that doesn't deter from being strong and being proud of who you are. And if you are struggling, reach out, ask for help. There is lots of different supports out there. You have Samaritans, you have the LGBT helpline, you have text LGBT to 50808. There are a load of different helpline numbers that will probably show at the end of this here video. But do reach out if you're struggling, if you need a bit of help. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask for it.
And I suppose from our perspective as well, just to say that the youth services are considered an essential service. So we're still here for young people, and we can still meet young people one-to-one or in small groups. So just because at the moment we're at the most extreme level, people think everything's closed down, but just to say that we are still here for young people, and we can still meet up with them, whether it's online or in a in a limited way, one-to-one. So just that, don't be alone, and that there is help and support out there. Okay, so I want to say thank you very, very much to everybody for contributing, and I think there's just so much content there, so much richness, so much information, that it would be great to anybody to have a listen in and find out more information. So I genuinely want to say thank you very much for everyone for sharing. So we'll leave it there for today, Barry.
Yeah, massive thank you to Hannah from Teni for coming on this morning. We had envisaged this as being a half an hour or so. Now we're rolling on in nearly an hour and a half. So
you can never stop me from talking.
I know that's the biggest problem. But also a massive thank you to Angela, because it is very difficult to come on and actually talk about your own personal experiences on such a public forum. And I really do appreciate the fact that you've come on board, that you're willing to be part of this morning's video, and that you're also going to help support the transparency group moving forward into the future as well. So thank you very much for your dedication and time, and to Catherine for allowing you to speak on her behalf as well.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Yeah, great conversation.
Okay, folks. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to end this at this moment.